welcome on a third guest to our panel of experts. Well, he's an expert. Sporting News national college football writer Bill Bender, friend of the program, rejoins the program on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. Bill, nice to have you back on the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
What's your life like right now as a college football writer as you watch the dominoes fall with scheduling and conference only and the I wish I could say like guaranteed future of college football. We're not sure that there's going to be a season. So what's your life like?
Uncertainty for sure as you look into the fall. And I think as we've looked into the Power 5 conferences, it's 5 different ways of how to do this thing. There is no uniformity. I know that's a long running joke when you deal with college football as a whole, when you talk about getting everybody on the same page. But you would have thought the extreme circumstances we're living in now would have made that more possible than it really has. By my estimation, the season could start anywhere from August 29th to October 3rd or not at all. So that's where we're at.
This week, there's been a lot of hopes that maybe BYU is going to be able to start the season against Alabama. That news broke yesterday that the SEC was going to go with the conference only. So that is no longer on the table. How much pressure do you think the SEC was under once the ACC made its decision to do the 9+1?
A lot. I think I was surprised that the ACC went to a +1 and then the SEC followed suit by going to a conference only schedule. But I had maintained all the time that I thought the SEC would do something similar to the Big Ten, just because those two conferences drive more than $300 million in revenue to the sport. They're kind of the that drive the bus. That's the analogy I always use. And I figured they would be on the same page. But when the ACC did the +1, now we're kind of turning our attention to the Big 12. What are they going to do? I know you guys are very interested in that for obvious reasons as well. But whether it's 9, 10, or 11 games, again, that disjointedness in the schedule really sticks out to me.
Yes, Bill, like the sands of the hourglass, the BYU to the Big 12 rumors have once again returned, and I'm banking on will end in heartbreak for BYU fans. But we're just trying to figure out if there's actual validity to any of this BYU to the Big 12 conversation. Can you make a case for why it would be beneficial to both sides?
Well, it's the same reason that Notre Dame joined the ACC for a year. Notre Dame has always rallied around and has stood firm on that. And because of the extremes we live in, they're able to work with the ACC. And it went both ways. I mean, that TV money from NBC that's going to go to the ACC versus we finally get to see Notre Dame in a conference. I think where it cuts a little bit different than BYU is as far as, through the conversations with you guys and others, BYU wants to be in the Power 5, wants to move up. And I think it would be a unique opportunity. One, for the Big 12, it gives them that 10th conference game. For BYU, it gives them a brand that can move into there and see if they can play with those guys and enjoy it. And obviously, there's factors in there that I think benefit both sides. And BYU of the independents is that next big brand after Notre Dame and BYU, obviously huge brands, but out of the independents, those are the two that you thought would get involved in a college football season.
What do you ultimately think the Big 12 is going to do? And I realize there's so much speculation involved in trying to answer a question like this, and all the variables change literally from minute to minute. But realizing what the other Power 5 conferences have done, what do you think ultimately the Big 12 decides to do?
Well, I think they're going to do something similar to the ACC with the +1 because of the 9-game conference schedule. That's assuming BYU isn't invited into the Big 12. And then the other wrinkle at work, and you're seeing this pop up, Have 40 reported about it yesterday, and others, I've heard other rumors about it, is the Big 10 may not play at all in the fall. They may decide to move to the spring. And I know that from living in Ohio, the same thing might happen. You're hearing rumors about what's the Mid-American Conference going to do. And that would also affect BYU because they can't get into the Power 5. Do they try to schedule some Group of 5 opponents, Mountain West opponents, Conference USA, and do they go that route? But if the Group of 5 isn't playing until the spring in some conferences, that might be more difficult to do.
Bill Bender of the Sporting News with us on BYU Sports Nation. Bill, you bring up the Group of 5 conference, and as you mentioned, it'll affect BYU if they decide to go conference only in the MAC because BYU has a game scheduled with Northern Illinois and DeKalb, Illinois in October. What impressions are you getting from not just the MAC, but all Group of Five conferences in your circles and conversations about what they're going to do in light of the movement from the Power Five conferences?
They have to try. I mean, you have to try to play if everybody else is playing. I mean, obviously that money, particularly from they call them the payoff games or whatever they want to call them, where paycheck game or you Power Five opponent and you get beat by 40, but you get that money and it helps select, your athletic department. So I think they're going to try to play, but I've also think this season maybe only there's some validity to pushing the Group of Five back to the spring. I'd do it. I'd let them play 5 or 6 games. I'd let them play for their own national championship. It'd be awesome to watch, App State play. Well, since I went to Ohio University, OU gets to play in that game. So if OU and App State played for the Group of Five national championship, I think it'd be the greatest thing in the world.
Go Bobcats.
Right. I don't think they've ever played BYU guys. You guys may know that better than me. I feel like a bad OU grad not knowing that, but I'm pretty sure they've never played BYU.
I'm checking that right now.
I can't remember that matchup prior to. So yeah, I'm not sure. So BYU Athletic Director Tom Homo has mentioned that he has, obviously, just like every other athletic director, has multiple scenarios that he can go to depending on whatever circumstances he's faced. It would certainly seem that maybe the last resort of those scenarios is going with an all-independent schedule. For BYU, how likely do you think that is in terms of what ultimately plays out?
Well, if you can find some opponents, rather via the +1 model, the ACC has that open and the SEC shut that door. So who's to say BYU can't schedule a Virginia? That'd be fun for you guys to watch that one, or Virginia Tech or that. I did at first ACC school. I pulled off my head too. I'm sorry about that. But and in the independents, you could probably get an 8 to 10 game schedule out of that. Now, if that means having to play a New Mexico or trying to get a Mountain West opponent. And the other thing with the Group of Five, like, for example, the Conference USA schedule yesterday, where they said they're going to play 8 games within conference. Well, if they're willing to step out and schedule other games, I think BYU could be active in scheduling some of those opponents.
Now, Bill, I want to go back to something you were just talking about. And for the record, BYU and Ohio have never played. So that is correct. They have never played. Maybe that'll change. Tom Homo on line 1. But you said you'd like to see the Group of Five teams play for a national championship kind of in their own division if it comes to that and they play in the spring. Are you in favor of Power Five separation from Group of Five separation along with FCS and kind of making 3 different divisions of Division I college football?
I think I am down the line. Maybe not this year, but in terms of the 5 Power Five conferences and the 2 independents that I think would factor honestly are BYU and Notre Dame. And I say that from my view of it is those are 2 programs that have won a national championship in the last 40 years. And they've won it in my lifetime. So I can say that they're capable of winning a national championship because they've done it. Now, you put them in that power, sure, you go with 66 schools, and then you go with the Group of Five. I think I get why the Group of Five wants to be where they're at. But UCF proved in a 4-team format that the Group of Five school is never going to make the playoff. So if they're waiting till we go to an 8-team playoff and they get an automatic bid that way, I understand. But is that a guarantee? Is it a guarantee that a Group of Five school would be one of the 8 best teams in the country if they did it that way, if they weren't an automatic qualifier? And that's something to keep in mind as they head to the next, all this talk about expansion. I am one of the few that I think 4 is fine. I think 4 playoff teams is good, and more sometimes can water down the season. I'm one of those guys. There aren't a lot of us anymore.
Well, and I want to take that maybe one step further because, like, specifically in the NBA, I know that over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of talk for people that wanted to change the schedule and have the games actually played in like late, in the winter time and then push it into the summer. So they're kind of, I don't want to say using this opportunity, but this may be an opportunity for some significant change, like moving when the NBA season is played. So taking what you were just talking about with college football, do you think that this is an opportunity for maybe those seeds to be planted a little deeper for those that do want a clear division between Power Five and the rest of the teams?
I think so. I think That's one thing that could happen. The other, with this conference-only scheduling, and you're seeing tweets about this now, is that, once the SEC gets a 10-game conference schedule, they may really like it. They may just like it and not play a lot of non-conference games. Same thing with the Big Ten. I thought baseball would do that in some ways, having the NL Central and the AL in the same region. But I think baseball's biggest issue right now, games have already been postponed, and we've only played 7 games. That's another college football I think we're going to encounter later. But yeah, I think the regionality part is very interesting. And then, as you mentioned about the 18 playoff, 14 playoff, 18 playoff, those kind of things, a lot of this is experimentation this year. It's a one-of-a-kind season. Notre Dame may like playing in a conference. That's another thing that I've been asking people all day yesterday was, what if Notre Dame wins the ACC? Do they like the conference, or do they, this isn't for us, we're going to go back to independent? And what would the impact of that be?
All right, Bill. Maybe we have buried the most important question for last, and we maybe have purposely avoided this. But is this all for naught? Like, is a college football season even going to happen? Because, as you pointed out, Major League Baseball is running into significant challenges now with multiple teams and players testing positive, notably the Phillies and the Marlins. So is college football inevitably headed for that and an early shutdown to the season if they try and play?
There's 2 schools of thought with this. There's some that say, well, try to play early and see what happens, get going in late August and get what you can in. And then if it becomes a demolition derby and we lose schools and players, so be it. And then there's the others. I thought the SEC's plan made sense in terms of starting late September, conference only, see what the NFL does, honestly, like with the NFL training camps. And if it's a mess with them, they can take a step back and say, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. I think baseball is going to get worse before it gets better, and that's going to have an impact on everything. And the people that are talking about a bubble, well, is there a bubble that can house 64 Power 5 schools, 130 schools, and all these players with football? I don't think that's possible, unfortunately. So my answer is I hope so. If we do, it'll be late September or October seems to make the most sense. And obviously it hinges on something none of us have ever dealt with in our lifetime.
Bill, great to catch up with you. The pride of Ohio. We'll work on that matchup between the Cougars and the Bobcats, and you keep doing your thing for the Sporting News. Thanks for the time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
You got it. Bill Bender on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.